Welcome to Full Moon Film Buff. This is episode 38. We're going to talk about The Werewolf of Washington from 1973. I rented this from Amazon Prime. I'd seen clips of this, but it was years ago. First, let's review the prominent crew and cast. The film was written and directed by Milton Moses Ginsburg, with effects makeup by Bob Obradovich. Milton Moses Ginsburg did more work in Hollywood as an editor than he did as a writer or director. The cast includes Dean Stockwell as Jack Whittier, Catalin Cayley as Giselle, Despo Diamantidou as Gypsy Woman, credited as Despo, Nancy Andrews as Mrs. Margie Captree, Clifton James as the Attorney General, Biff McGuire as the President, Ben Yaffe as Mr. Captree, Jane House as Marion, Beeson Carroll as Commander Salmon, Michael Dunn as Dr. Kiss, and Stephen Cheng as the Chinese Foreign Minister. Dean Stockwell came from a family of actors. Both his parents acted. His father voiced the prince in Walt Disney's animated film Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. His mother was a vaudeville actress, and his stepmother was also an actress. His elder brother acted as well. Dean started acting as a 9-year-old. His career spanned a mind-boggling 70 years and over 200 acting roles. My two personal favorite Dean Stockwell roles were both TV shows, The Brilliant Quantum Leap and the equally amazing 21st century reboot of Battlestar Galactica. Clifton James made a niche for himself, playing fast-talking Southern characters, often lawmen. The interesting part of that is he was not Southern by birth, being born in the American Northwest. In my mind, his best roles were in Cool Hand Luke and a pair of James Bond films, Live and Let Die and The Man with the Golden Gun. Biff McGuire was a prolific second lead movie actor and star on the stage for over 50 years. There's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about here, and for that reason, I'm really excited about this film. But it's not a fun or scary movie. It's not consistent from a cinematic point of view. It's better as a kickoff for an intellectual discussion than anything else. For those reasons, I don't really recommend it for casual entertainment. But if you want to listen to me talk about it, go ahead and listen to the synopsis. Now, the most interesting tidbits I could find about this movie actually involve later edits. In 2012, a film called President Wolfman is comprised largely of footage from The Werewolf of Washington, redubbed and recut with some additional footage added on. We will absolutely look at that movie when we get to that point throughout history. Also, in 2021, the director, Milton Moses Ginsburg, prepared a new, much tighter edit. He was contractually obligated to deliver a 90-minute long film back in the 70s, and so he made a 90-minute long film. That's what he had signed a contract to do. However, he recently recut it, reducing it down to about 74 minutes, changing some of the footage in Hungary to black and white footage, and making some other minor cuts and changes to the musical score. Apparently, this copy of the film is on a recent Blu-ray release of The Werewolf of Washington. So the next time I rent a stack of movies from Scarecrow Video, I might throw this onto the stack and watch it. If I do, I may release a supplemental video to this video if I find there's anything interesting to add in that new edit. Now let's review the spoilers. Jack Whittier is an American reporter working in Hungary. Jack drives off the road, narrowly missing a strange man. Local Romani are of no help. Wolves howl in the night. Surprisingly, Jack yelling louder in English does not help. Jack fights off a wolf with his cane, but is bitten in the struggle. But it's not a wolf's body lying at his feet, but a man's. The police do not want any part of whatever is going on, and so let Jack free. Jack suspects the White House is covering something up. In rural Hungary in 1973, the White House. The mother of the gypsy Jack killed cryptically thanks him for releasing her son. She tells Jack that he must die to be saved. When she says to beware the sign of the pentagram, he assumes she means the Pentagon is behind all of this. She gives him a charm and tells him to be careful now because he will suffer the same effects as her son. Jack now suspects it's the communists covering something up, which actually does make more sense in Hungary in 1973. Jack is as paranoid as they come. He flushes the charm down the next toilet he sees. When he returns to Washington, D.C., he accepts a job working for the president, managing a Supreme Court nomination. Jack also previously had a relationship with the president's daughter, Marion. Jack sees the mark of the pentagram in the judge's wife's hand. Jack feels changes coming over him whenever the moon is full. Gruesome murders occur all over Washington, starting with the judge's wife, all related to the president's staff. Jack's superior, Commander Salmon, covers up the crimes. He has some very weird theories. The police want to pin the crimes on the Black Panthers or even just some random black dude. The cops have no idea how to talk to the press. Jack becomes convinced he is a werewolf. He tries to explain this to the president, but the latter does not believe him. Neither does Commander Salmon. Instead, Salmon convinces Jack that this is a mental psyop and that he's been brainwashed by somebody. Nope, we get a great transformation scene. Jack is a werewolf. He attacks more people before a cop drives him off with some gunfire, but none of the bullets actually hurt Werewolf Jack. Marion keeps trying to hook up with Jack. The president has a weird pep talk with Jack at a bowling alley in the basement of the White House. Jack's fingers start to swell, the first symptom of his transformation, and his fingers get stuck inside the bowling ball. The pair head to a meeting in the war room. One general rants about hippies, the press, and Congress. The president wants to safely pull troops out of Southeast Asia, but the generals say meaningless mumbo-jumbo and essentially bamboozle the president into instead ordering a new attack. Jack barely escapes the room before transforming, finding his way into some industrial basement where he has a bizarre encounter with a little person scientist, Dr. Kiss, who seems to be making a flesh golem. I was incredibly confused. Jack then wakes up in Arlington National Cemetery. Jack buys a single silver bullet. It's all they can make in a day. Dr. Kiss has Werewolf Jack on surveillance video. Dr. Kiss wants Jack captured alive for his experiments. Jack presents all his evidence to Commander Salmon, including the pattern of the killings forming the shape of the pentagram. The final murder will occur at the Watergate Hotel, where Jack has an apartment. Salmon is finally convinced and agrees to restrain Jack in his apartment and record the transformation for science. Jack would rather die. Marion comes over to Jack's apartment and says she's going to stay the night and prove this whole werewolf thing is in his head. How does she know about the werewolf? Jack never told her. She kisses him. She apparently likes her men chained up. The president needs Jack for a special interview with the Chinese prime minister. He sends a helicopter, even though Jack begs him not to. On the helicopter, with the president and the Chinese prime minister, Jack transforms into a werewolf. The president is an idiot and does not even notice. Jack attacks the president. Now the president finally listens. They get off the helicopter and Jack attacks the whole press corps in front of the Secret Service and the military. They fire on Jack and he runs away. He returns to Marion, who has been preparing a romantic candlelit dinner. When she sees him, she shoots him with the silver bullet. In slow motion, Jack changes back to his human form. Multiple witnesses decide to cover the whole werewolf situation up by saying Jack bravely stepped into the line of fire to protect Marion. An aide confirms the president will live despite the bite he received. In audio over the closing credits, the president addresses the nation. At the very end, he begins to change into a werewolf. The basic transformation scenes are simple, old-school dissolve sequences, with one big difference. I lost count of how many dissolves there were. They used a lot, which means that they could very, very subtly modify the makeup job between the individual steps. They did a fantastic job keeping Dean's face in the same place between shots. So I'm certain they must have developed some new tricks to help achieve that goal. The end result is this is probably one of the best looking transformations that we've seen so far. Moving on to talk about werewolf lore, this movie isn't interested in updating or adding to the werewolf lore. It's got other thematic issues on its mind. It lives its werewolf lore almost exactly from 1941's The Wolfman and Lawrence Talbot, right? Larry and Jack both step in to defend a woman from a wolf. They both beat the wolf to death with a silver-headed cane. And they get bit in the process. Both Larry and Jack are thanked by the mother of the man that they killed and given a charm to protect themselves from the beast that they're about to turn into. Both get rid of the charm. Both become a werewolf on nights of the full moon. Both are immune to normal weapons and are vulnerable to silver. This is the universal Wolfman just being used to comment on politics. So let's talk about politics. The first thing I want to mention is that this film was clearly made as a response to President Richard Nixon and the Watergate scandal. I mean, Jack's apartment is literally in the Watergate building. The writer and director acknowledged that this was a response to Nixon in interviews. I'm sure there are a lot of references in the film. I did notice that the president wanted to get out of Southeast Asia without appearing weak, which is my understanding of what Nixon wanted. But truth be told, I was 2 years old going on 3 when the Watergate break-in occurred and the ensuing cover-up brought down Nixon and his administration. I'm not the guy to catch all of the specific Nixon references. But we can talk about the general criticism of politics and politicians. Don't worry, I have no intention of bringing up 21st century politics. Just do your civic duty and vote. That's all I got to say about that. But before we get into the politics, well, or more accurately, let's start by talking about the press and their relationship to politics. After all, Jack begins this movie as a reporter, and he gets hired by the president as an assistant press secretary, someone whose job it is to interact with the press. Multiple scenes in this movie occur at press conferences, whether scheduled or impromptu. I mean, Jack physically attacks the press corps at the end of the movie. The movie really builds on this love-hate relationship that politicians have with reporters, and vice versa. The dynamic interaction, often characterized as mutual dependence with unavoidable tension, underscores the intricate nature of the symbiotic relationship between those in power and the Fourth Estate. Politicians need media coverage to disseminate messages, to reach wider audiences, and to build public support for their policies and plans. Conversely, reporters rely on politicians for news stories, quotes, and access to information. However, this relationship is not without its challenges and often becomes toxic, as this film demonstrates. Politicians seek to dictate the narrative and create a specific public image through strategic media manipulation and outright pretense. Reporters also have their own motives, motives that often conflict with the politicians' motives and sometimes even conflict with the audiences and the public's motives. The struggle for control over the message creates tension, right? That's just flat out what happens. Tensions that can lead to bad behavior, which is what we see over and over again in this movie. Every politician in this film wants to hide bad behavior. Not just bad behavior, they want to hide news, any news, because they're afraid of how the press is going to use it. And that's a knee-jerk reaction and not a good one. I couldn't find the original source for the aphorism. It's not the crime, it's the cover-up. But I do know that the idea became popular during the Watergate scandal, and you can see that here. These politicians want to control all information, and they can't. And in attempting to control it, they often suffer the worst effects by trying to control it. When it does get out, they're not in front of it. And this is something Jack repeatedly tries to help them understand. Now, a second critique of politicians and government that this film makes is that they just don't listen. Jack tries to tell several people that he is a werewolf. No one actually ever listens to him. They all have their own agendas. Everyone in this film is just thinking about how they can use other people to get what they want. They also think they know everything. They think they have all the information, that they're in charge. Everyone should listen to them. And if you know everything, then you don't have anything to learn, so why listen? The film does take some shots at the military. This is to be expected in a film made at the height of the biggest proxy war of the Cold War era. This film was released 2 years before the fall of Saigon. There's just one major scene that takes shots at the military, and it pretty much just covers the same topics that the much better film Dr. Strangelove much more successfully and famously tackled about a decade earlier. Werewolf of Washington just doesn't have the time or the space to really do this thematic critique justice. Finally, I want to talk about paranoia, which is such an appropriate theme for a werewolf movie. Jack starts the film paranoid, worried that the American government is covering something up or the Russian government is covering something up. In rural Hungary, right, a reporter almost hit a guy and fought a wolf, and that's, to Jack, somehow something that the governments of the world are going to be interested in. Just crazy. Every single politician in this movie is paranoid of the press corps. Every reporter in this movie is paranoid of the cops and the military soldiers. What makes this all the more strange is that nobody in the movie is paranoid about the Wolfman, the one legitimate threat that is actually killing people. And I think that's a valuable insight. People worry about things that maybe they don't have control over and they don't need to be worried about, while they are blasé about things that they could actually have some control over and might actually, have some consequences. I think that's really, really interesting. So if you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Feel free to share your thoughts and additional observations in the comments down below. Let me know what I got wrong and what you noticed. Next, I plan on discussing Santo and Blue Demon versus Dracula and the Wolfman from 1973. So keep an eye on the moon, a silver bolt in the chamber, and we'll see you back here next time.